I remember my grandmother as a kind and loving person who always tried to do something good for us. Her house was a place where we, as children, felt truly happy. It was cozy. The kitchen smelled of freshly baked pies and herbal tea, and old photo albums on the shelves told the story of our big family. To me, my grandmother was a pillar of strength, the unshakable foundation of our family. Her warmth and care seemed boundless. But everything changed 6 months ago. In January, my grandmother started calling us frequently. Her voice was different, tired and anxious. She began pleading with us to bring her to live with us. "I'm getting old, and it's hard to live alone," she said. My grandfather had passed away 2 years earlier, and no matter how strong she tried to be, loneliness had taken its toll. After long discussions, my parents decided that she would move in with us. Our house had enough space, and my grandmother was an independent, resourceful woman. No one doubted she would fit right in. My father immediately prepared to go and bring her back. But when he arrived at her house, it was too late. The neighbors had found her that morning. She had passed away during the night. The news was devastating. Her passing was a severe blow to our family. The funeral was hard on everyone, and my father seemed particularly affected. He became distant, withdrawn, spending hours in silence. It felt like he was hiding something, but none of us dared to ask. Time passed, and in May, I brought up the idea of visiting her house. It had been sitting empty for half a year, and I was worried it might have been vandalized. But my father reacted sharply. He refused to even consider going back and forbade me from going alone. When I pressed him for a reason, he simply said, "There's no need." I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Curiosity and concern got the better of me, so I decided to go without telling my parents. I convinced my best friend to come along, and we packed for the trip. We brought food, drinks, meat for a barbecue, flashlights, and even an old hunting knife I found at home, just in case. The drive was long. As we turned off the main highway onto the old road leading to the village, everything around us felt different. The road narrowed and was surrounded by dense forest. The trees seemed to close in, nearly blocking out the sky. The air was eerily quiet, broken only by the hum of the car engine. We didn't see a single car or person the entire way. When we reached the village, a wave of nostalgia hit me, but it quickly gave way to unease. The houses looked intact, but something was off. The local store, which was always open, was closed. As we drove toward my grandmother's house, the strangeness grew. Many gates were open or broken, the yards overgrown with weeds. There was no sound, no barking dogs, no children playing, not even birds singing. When we finally reached my grandmother's house, I felt a small sense of relief. The house looked fine, but the yard was overgrown with tall grass, the gazebo's roof had caved in, and the garden was long abandoned. The key, as always, hung under the awning. It felt strange to enter the house after so long. The air was heavy, the walls cold, and the once lively home felt lifeless. We spent hours tidying up, rearranging furniture, and fixing small things here and there. By evening, we were exhausted and decided to take a walk to the river. The river, which had been my childhood sanctuary, now seemed different. The surrounding silence was oppressive. My friend, clearly uneasy, lit a cigarette and asked, "Has it always been this creepy here?" I shook my head, not knowing how to answer. We decided to head back to the house. When we returned, we were shocked. The front door, which I had closed, was wide open. Our belongings were scattered, and the meat we brought for the barbecue was gone. I searched the yard, the garden, even peered over the neighbors' fences, but there was no sign of anyone. We locked the door and decided to stay inside for the night. As night fell, the atmosphere grew heavier. At first, it was just quiet, but then we heard a loud knock on one of the windows. Shortly after, my friend's car alarm went off. The sound would start and stop, as if someone was deliberately toying with us. We sat in the dark, trying to stay as quiet as possible, listening for any signs of movement. Then, I noticed footsteps outside the window. Someone, or something, was walking, trying to be stealthy, but dry branches cracking underfoot gave them away. My heart was pounding so loudly I thought it would burst. My friend gripped a stool tightly, ready to use it as a weapon. Suddenly, the front door shuddered as if someone had thrown their full weight against it. But the heavy wooden door held firm. When morning came, the village was blanketed in thick fog. We couldn't drive in such conditions, but staying felt unbearable. Finally, as the fog began to clear, we decided to make a run for it. I took an axe, and my friend grabbed the car keys. We burst out of the house, leaving everything behind, and sprinted to the car. The entire drive back to the highway was silent. I sat clutching the axe, bracing for something to jump out at us. Only when we reached the main road, surrounded by other cars and people, did we feel a sense of relief. We'd never talked about that night since. I didn't tell my parents everything, just that there was no reason to go back. My father nodded, as if he already knew. Now I understand why he didn't want us to go. Whatever is in that village, it's not something I ever want to encounter again.